and this spoke to me, and I think if it speaks to me, it most certainly will speak to you. 2 Kings chapter 6. This is just a little spotlight for the week. 2 Kings chapter 6, verses 1 through 6. It says, "And the sons of the prophets said to Elisha, See now, the place where we dwell with you is too small for us. Please let us go to the Jordan, and let us every man take a beam from there, and let us make there a place where we may dwell." So he answered, Go. Then one said, Please consent to go with your servants. And he said, I will go. So he went with them, and when they came to the Jordan, they cut down trees. But as one was cutting down a tree, the iron axe head fell into the water, and he cried out and said, Alas, master, for it was borrowed. So the man of God, Elisha, said, Where did it fall? And he showed him the place. So he cut off a stick, he threw it in that area, right there, and he made the iron float. Axe head floated. Therefore he said, Pick it up for yourself. So he reached out his hand and took it. Now what had happened right before that? Well, Elisha had basically, by the power of God, healed a Syrian general. And then this happens. And then what's getting ready to happen was Elisha, by the power of God, was going to help Israel be delivered from the army that was going to be against them, which this would have been a miracle. Now you sit here and you think, a major miracle of healing somebody. A major miracle of here you are, a small little group fighting against a large army, and God allows you to win the battle. Those are two major things, right? But here you got a man who was a son of a prophet. In other words, he was a student of the prophet. During those days, there were small groups that were students of the prophet. They had like a class. The prophets were teaching. They were mentoring. Here this was a student who came with them and helped. And here he's using an axe that belonged to someone else. And as he's swinging and hitting the wood, the head of it comes loose and goes right into the middle of the river. What's the chances of finding that? If you've got a deep river, definitely not. Right? But this son of a prophet gets so worried because now he's going to have to make restitution for this, and he may not have had the money to do it. So he goes to the prophet, Elisha. He says, Master, what am I going to do? This was borrowed. This didn't belong to me. The prophet sees the fear and the perplexity in this young man's face. So he takes up a stick and he throws it right where the guy said it dropped. And all of a sudden, axe head starts floating to the top. And he says, Go fetch it. Now, how did that speak to me? I'm going to tell you how it spoke to me. Sometimes I'm ashamed to ask God for something because I think it's insignificant. There's starving children in Ethiopia. And here I am asking for this little gadget or this little favor or this something that is not really that important that I can live without.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm ashamed to even ask God for that. But what happened here? God allowed a miracle to take place, even over something insignificant, because of the faith of the ones involved in it. What does that speak to me and tell me? Don't be afraid to ask God for anything. Don't be afraid to ask God for anything. Don't be afraid. God loves us so much, He even looks at the insignificant things of what we're going through. And He may still grant us what we want. He's still God. He has the option to say yea or nay. But that's what it speaks to me and tells me. And it also tells me one thing too. Elisha was the main prophet. And here he is giving his attention to the insignificant ones of the church, the sons of the prophets, the students. He could have said, go talk to your headmaster, go talk to your leader, go talk to... No. He took it upon himself to say, let's see if God will fix this for you. It doesn't matter how large a ministry gets. The ones in charge and the ones leading should always take note of everyone. The children, the teenagers, the poor, not just the rich and the ones that got clout and the ones that have position. You take note of everyone. Show the same love and concern to everyone as Elisha did here. So this is a word that spoke to me this week, and I pray that it will speak to you. Okay, we're going to sing one last final song, and then we're going to let Sister Karhleen get up and preach to us.
Okay, good.
Now, I want you all to act happy. In fact, stand up, please. Get a little movement. Get a little... Come on, let them old bones crack. Come on. Oh, happy day. Oh, happy day. Oh, happy day. Oh, happy day. Come on. When Jesus walked. 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 He washed my sins away. Oh, happy day.
We're talking about a happy
Oh, happy, happy, happy day. I'm talking about a happy day. I'm talking about a happy day. It's a happy, happy, happy day. Happy day. Hallelujah. 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 Take that crown off your face. It's a happy day.
That's right.
Praise the Lord.
Praise the Lord.
We're going to invite Pastor Karhleen from North Carolina. She represents our ministry in North Carolina. She's a pastor. And she's official. She's an official pastor, serving in the capacity of pretty much overseeing all the work there that is being done in North Carolina and with the missions work. We're going to invite her to come forward. It's okay, boo-boo. Pastor Karhleen.
Okay, I know you all want to know about my missions trip. The title of my little speech today was Happiness is a Choice. And I'm wanting to kind of work that in with my trips in Africa so you can know what's happening over there. I go with 2 other people who very much want to be ordained with your ministry. And will be soon. And Pastor Jay gets a chance to come back there and have the ordination. And his heart is for the wells in Africa. We are appalled on our visits that the children cannot get fresh water. They are drinking from streams where the animals wander in and out. And they die often from the diseases that are carried in the water. And they even have fear of wells. So we're looking to have our wells inspected by the government and make sure that they're sufficient for them to drink from. Now the first well we did, virtually, all we did was help God do it, because it was an artesian well and the water will bubble out of it all the time. And the children were drowning in it because there were sticks over top of the hole in the ground where the water was bubbling up. And they would put a bucket down into the ground to pull the water up, and sometimes the little children would fall in. So what we had done to it was, they were familiar with what to do with it, they just didn't have the money. So we provided the $300 they needed to put a wall there with a 500-gallon drum behind it, and a pipe coming out of the 500-gallon drum through the cement wall where it would continuously run, and they could put their bottle underneath and fill their bottle full of water.
Now, did it get approved?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet. We're waiting to find out just how that proceeds. But we have already done 2 wells.
2 wells.
And they hit water about 30 feet down on each of those wells. And that's a good thing, and it's not so good because the well needs to be deep enough to hold water for the dry season.
Right.
So, and we may have to go back to those 2 wells and dig them a little deeper in the dry season so they'll have a holding space in the next season when the rain comes.
Yes.
They'll have a holding space below the point where the water actually comes into the well.
They can do that.
But it's a wonderful thing to have them dug personally by people instead of by drilling machines, because the families are fed and cared for in those in the process of doing the well. It takes about 3 weeks, and they're eating, they're working, and their families are eating, and it keeps everybody happy. And having jobs is a good thing in any situation, and especially in Uganda, there's just not very many jobs around. So
Is this for just one village or more than one now?
we've just done 2 wells for 2 different churches. And the churches are coming together through our ministry, which mainly dwells upon unity. Trying to get the churches to come together and share what they have, because some of them have sound systems and some of them don't. And we're trying to teach them that, they need to be sharing these things between themselves. And it's an exciting process. We planned on 13 wells, and we've gotten 2 done, and we've kind of gotten a little indication that we are needing to have some proper permits. So that's what we're looking into now. And that may be a tune of maybe $140 or $180 just to get the permit. We're not sure. So we have to do it long distance. We do it by messenger, and the pictures come on messenger all the time for us to see the progress. And when we're not satisfied with maybe the equipment or whatever, we'll say, we don't want you to do that equipment. That doesn't look good. That looks like it's used. Take it back to the store and we'll get something new and better. And so they do. It's really quite helpful. It's a lot different than doing it without being able to see the process. And so that's what we're doing right now in Africa, is those wells.
Is the permit part of that $850 for the, no, that's separate.
Now, the permit is separate from the $850 to do the well. And I was going to tell you something about
How many people
those
is the
permits.
well servicing? Is it like just the church well, or is it on the church property and all the church people use it?
That's the point also that we have to make with them, is to make sure that they understand we're not building these wells for them to put locks on them so that no one can use them. We're asking them to open them to the public, and his vision for it is living water, the living water that causes life in the physical world, the living water that causes life in the spiritual world. And he's trying to get them to realize that they've got to open these wells to everybody. And sure, you have to monitor them so that they don't destroy them or whatever. And they might have to be locked for periods of time, but there should be periods of time when everyone should be able to come and get water from the wells.
That's right. Does the government have anything to do with that?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand what you said.
She was asking, does the government have anything to do with it?
Well, that's what we're hoping, that the permits will clear the way for the government to be satisfied with what we're doing. I don't think they're dissatisfied at this point.
But the government's not doing anything themselves, correct, to help the water situation?
No, they are not doing anything to help the situation. And many of the wells observed belong to private property, even though they're in public places, and they have locks on all of them. And when and where they're opened is very vague. And the children need to have clean water.
A lot of them are held by the Muslims.
Well, in the community we were working in, which we're hoping that we won't be consistently working in that community, Muslim people moved in and took over the whole area, the whole town, and everybody in there was able to get water from the wells that they built. And they were able to get food, which is, food is just as scarce as water. And they were able to get food. The children were being fed, and the children were getting water. Their whole families were getting water. And then all of a sudden, they cut it off. And they say, if you want to get water from this place, in the future, you were gonna have to become a Muslim.
Really?
Or you were gonna, you know, your children can still come here and get food if your family becomes Muslim. So we're opening those wells to the Muslims as well. We're making sure that they are not closed against the Muslim people. And many people in one specific place, we know where the Muslims passed by and they came to the well and they've been converted. So 3 new Muslim converts came from the well already. So the
How
wells
big
are doing more than just watering the people.
How big is the village?
The village is maybe 5,000 to 15,000 people.
Really? That's a lot. That's big, huh?
So, and of course, it spreads farther and farther as the, you know, as the town grows. And they have many, many children that are on their own. Their parents have died from AIDS, and they are on the streets by themselves, or their parents are druggies or alcoholics, and the children are left to fend for themselves and find food and water. And of course, you know how children are. They are thirsty, they'll see water, and they're not observant of this needs to be clear and clean for me to drink it. They just drink whatever they can get a hold of. And that's why there is so much sickness. So, yes.
And the wells have to be on the church property.
Right. That's another thing that slows us down a bit. It has to be owned by the people of the church, the property that the church is on, and then we can put the well on it. If they're renting it, then we can't put the well on it. So we have to, it's been an encouragement to them to get the property in their names. So, you know how some people will just go on and on and on with a situation that's working for them. But now that they can think, well, if I own this property, I might be able to have a well here. And so they're excited about that. So some of the people are achieving that. In fact, twice now, the persons who own the property have given the property to the church on purpose so that they could have the well. So we have some that are ready to receive the well soon. So.
How is their food supply? Is it bad?
Food is,
Okay.
I'm not sure exactly what the problem is. It seems like such a lucrative land for growing things. They're, excuse me, they're close to the equator, so it's a growing season year-round in the area where we were. But I only saw sweet potatoes, white sweet potatoes that were hard like rocks once they're cooked. And, you know, I'm wondering how much food value is in that white sweet potato. And I did see, I saw fields of corn. Fields of corn is what I saw. And there's another vegetable that they eat too that I saw there as well, kind of a squash. A squash is what they were eating. Not much meat. Meat is at a premium. They don't have beef or pork. If even when I ate there, I think I had at the best maybe a teaspoonful of meat at each meal, and one meal a day. One meal a day. So.
Medical, is there any hospital or nurses or doctors?
They're few and far between. There are clinics that are in between, trying to keep the hospitals from being too full. The clinics try to take care of things that are much more minor than a hospital visit. And of course, their AIDS testing can be done in those clinics for free, and they're not doing it. And they're also can receive the medicine for free, and they're not doing that either, because it's such a shame to them to have AIDS. And so they don't even want to know if they have AIDS, and they don't go and get tested. And then they don't go to the pharmacy because, of course, privacy laws in Uganda are nil. to nothing, like we have here privacy laws for us to keep people from knowing what we're doing at the pharmacy. Well, there's no way to keep that information from the community there, so they don't go to buy their medicine or to get their medicine for free. So sometimes others will go for them, and if they do, they charge them $50 to pick it up for someone else. So
That's the same, we have the same rule in the United States. Black people will not go get tested to find out if they have AIDS. Because it is a big stigma, and especially in the black community, because it's looked down as a put down, or you are gay, or you are bisexual. So,
Wow.
they just started announcing on TV with movie stars to say it's okay to go get tested for AIDS. So, it's not only in Africa, it's here in the United States that has a big stigma here between the black community. And that's why, you know, because we hold value of trying to look like we are somebody or look like we are important. And black people have a way of shaming each other. You know, instead of saying, I want to help you have AIDS, we go like, oh, don't drink that, she got AIDS. You know,
Yeah.
so when we actually shame people from having a disease, then no one is going to come out and say they have it. And so that's the part of in the black community about shaming people that have
There
it.
is some cures for that now. There is some cure for that.
It doesn't
Is
matter.
Is that in the Northern California?
No, that's in the black community. If you are ashamed that you have AIDS, you're not going to get help.
In the United States.
The thing with the AIDS situation is, if you are an orphan in an orphanage, you're automatically tested. But even then, there's a stigma that goes with it. And as they get old enough, I know of a young man who was old enough to go off to college, and he had received his he had gotten a scholarship, and he had been taking the medicine as long as he was in the orphanage. But now he's about to graduate from the orphanage and high school and off to college, and he stopped taking his medicine. It took no time at all for him to die. He just died almost overnight. It was shocking. In fact, the orphanage man was with me in the United States visiting, and he had to go home right away because all of the children in the orphanage call him Dad. He was their father, and he died, and so he went home to bury him. And he was ready to go off to college with a scholarship, so he didn't want anyone to know he was taking the medicine. So he figured before he goes off to college, he's going to make sure that nobody's going to know it. He stopped taking his medicine. But the medicine keeps you alive and healthy and safe these days. Used to be that you would die within 7 years, but that's because they didn't have the right kind of medicine to work with. Now it's much better. So that's what's going on in Africa. And that's the things we care about. I go and I try to teach them, that first of all, people need to know that you cannot catch AIDS from touching someone else. You can't even catch AIDS from brushing your teeth with his toothbrush.
Yeah, it's terrible.
You know why?
Oxygen.
Oxygen kills it immediately. So once it comes out of your body in the form of an excrement or a saliva, it hits the oxygen and dies. It can't be caught from a tabletop. Hepatitis C can be caught from a tabletop in a hospital 6 months after it's been washed down. 6 months. So, some of the people with AIDS take that stance. They protect their caretakers, and they tell their caretakers that they have hepatitis C because the stigma doesn't travel with hepatitis C. It only travels with AIDS. So if they're protecting themselves from hepatitis C, they won't catch AIDS. And so that's how they sometimes get around having to tell their caregivers that they are HIV positive or AIDS positive. So
And it's passed from male to female.
it's more easily passed from male to female because the male deposits the fluid to the male in sexual intercourse. So those are the key things that people should know about AIDS. And somebody has a question? Jay?
Now, I was just going to say, explain to you, or explain to everyone why you felt that your calling in Africa for the last 2 years has been so important, and how it related to your personal situations.
Well, I was called to Africa when I was 9 years old. And the first time that I ever got the chance to go to Africa was when I was 74. And I've been many other places. So for 43 years I've been traveling to different
God
places.
finally put you where you were called, right?
Finally, I'm at the place where I was called. And I don't believe that I'll ever go anywhere else in the world except that, unless it, you never know. I say you never say never when you walk with God.
Amen.
But pretty certain that I'll never go anywhere else except Africa.
Amen.
Now until it's time to go home with Jesus. So,
How did you know you were called at 9? What happened?
I blurted it out of my mouth when my mother told me I was going to be a nurse.
Oh, wow.
I was 9 and I said I never talked against my mother, ever. I hid behind her skirts. I was a very, very shy person. For me to have said that had to be the Lord, the Holy Spirit speaking it, because I was not that kind of a person. And I said, no, Mother, I won't be a nurse. I will be a missionary to Africa.
Oh.
And I never said it again, but I wondered all those years, why hadn't it come about? Well, I never became a Christian till I was 32 years old. Come on, God had to get me there somehow. So, but now see, now you know how old I am. 43 years a Christian and I was 32 when I did it, right? Just add the numbers. But yeah, it's that's exactly how I got called to Africa. Now, I didn't know specifically how or why I was going to get called to Africa, but I certainly do know now. That's mostly what I try to do, is inform people and help them to understand that they have to do it.
Yeah.
And I oftentimes use this expression, if Jesus sacrificed for you so that you could live, then you need to sacrifice. You also need to sacrifice for him and choose life.
That's right.
Now, I lost a son when he was 21 years old in a car wreck. And so I spent 3 years in grief. And I spent 3 years in grief the wrong way. I stayed there much too long. And my whole purpose in preaching also over there is to let people know that you have to make a choice to be happy. Joy isn't something that you just have or you don't. I'm sorry, it's a choice. And it's almost a command. And one of the verses that I have, I'm just going to read this one to you. John 15:11 was the verse, but the 10 verses that went before it are almost, and I'm going to tell you to read the 10 verses before it yourself. And I'm going to read you verse 11. John 15:11, these things have I spoken unto you, that my joy might remain in you, and that your joy might be full. Now, those 10 verses ahead of that is telling you how God commands us to have this joy. It's almost, it's an obedience. You think you have to feel it? You think you're going to feel some emotion? You think it's this going to be, and I'll be happy? Or this is going to happen, and I'm going to be happy? You're to be happy all the time. You're to be happy all the time. And if you ask God to give it to you, He will give it to you. And I will show you what happened. 3 whole years, I was miserable. Miserable. Everybody in my space knew it too. I was angry and I was ugly for 3 years. And when I walked past that mirror, I saw my face and I said, God, where is my smile? I don't even know that woman anymore. Who is she? I said, you have got to help me to get my smile back. And so I said, God, please, I'll paste it on. You just make it real. So I went around for a week, pushing my mouth, looking in the mirror, and trying to make the smile come back. It wasn't happening, but I promised, so I kept doing it every day. I knew he would come through for me. On the 7th day, I woke up laughing, just laughing. Laughter, the kind of laughter God gives when you're in a room full of people and He has just put the spirit of laughter on everybody. That's the kind of laughter I woke up with on the 7th day. So I always like to say it's the 7. 7 is the number of completion, so it was a good thing. Anyway, that's why I want people to realize that, it doesn't just happen to you. You have to choose it yourself. A merry heart doeth good like a medicine, but a broken spirit drieth the bones. And I can honestly say that I was sick on and off all that whole 3 years. So my advice to you is to get a hold of God's joy. Now Psalms 32:7 says, you are my hiding place. You will preserve me from trouble. You will compass me about with songs of deliverance. So let me sing you this, my favorite song, my song of deliverance. That's a little too high. You are my hiding place. You always fill my heart with songs of deliverance. Whenever I am afraid, I will trust in you. I will trust in you. Let the weak say, I am strong in the strength of the Lord. I will trust in you.
Amen. Yes, well, we thank Sister Pastor Karhleen for her work. She has a whole lot other stories to tell. She has a bigger testimony than what she shared with us. And so I'm sure as we get associated with her in more of a home-like, personal atmosphere, she may tell more. But it just shows you that we serve a God who can take all the ugly, all the hurt, and all the pain, and He can shape something completely different out of it. And that's what our sister here has done. You know, since she came to really know Christ, she's had travesty hit her family. But God worked through it with her. And now she's doing what she's doing, and we're blessed to be associated with her. And I'm sure, you know, as we continue to advance in our ministry, and as we continue to make advancement in what we're doing, we're going to see what we can do to help with what she's doing overseas as well. It may be that some of us can go with her on one of these trips. That would be a lovely thing. But she is, the last time she went representing us. So a lot of people befriended me on Facebook after she came back because they know this is the ministry she's with. And a lot of them are responding to our YouTube. So they know us. We just don't know them. So hopefully there will be a day when we all will know each other. You know, so we'll continue to pray for her advancement and the advancement of this ministry in conjunction with what she's doing. And, you know, we wish Godspeed on it. I asked her to stay up here because most of you here today are women. She was the one who brought an anointed message. And I think she's the one who, if you want prayer today, she should be the one to pray for you. So however she wants to do it, if you all want to come, any of you want prayer, we normally offer that every week. Any of you want prayer, we're going to let you get in line and let Sister Karhleen pray.
I want to tell you just one little tiny story.
Okay.
Last time I went to Uganda, the time before I went to Uganda, and 2 years ago I went to Kenya. In Kenya, I told the story about AIDS. And a little girl came forward, she was holding a baby, and she wanted to get prayed for. Now, they don't pray. I mean, they really don't. They didn't want to get prayer. And there were people in that room with AIDS. And she walked up, bold as she could be, and I said, "How is the baby? Is she positive or negative?" She said, "She's negative." But I said, "And you want to be prayed for to be healed from AIDS?" And she said, "Yes." And I prayed for her. And I never found out until 2 years later she had been totally healed. She was spreading it all over the area, Kenya, in Kisumu, Kenya. And she was spreading it all over the area, but she had been healed by Jesus Christ from AIDS. And she was negative when she went to get tested this time.
Amen. Amen. So people say, well, why don't we have profound miracles?